All right, I promised a story time on my 7-day marriage. So, I've never wanted to get married. Has never been a thing that I wanted to do. I used to always tell my mom when I was little that I couldn't wait till I grew up to have kids. For some reason, marriage was just not my thing. At 10, 7, 8, somewhere around that age, I don't know why, it just didn't have an appeal to me. And I would add on to that. But if I did get married, I want to marry someone like LT because we used to call my dad LT. Because my dad seemed cool. Like if I was gonna have a husband one day, it was gonna be like that. My husband would be like him. Fast forward, I dated all through my 20s, 30s. Had my daughter in my 30s with a guy that I had been in a relationship with for 4 years, who I later went on to marry. Um, But when I met my husband, my first husband, the 7-day man, I was 40. And for some reason, around the age of 40, I started having this like thought in my head. What are people thinking the fact that you've never been married? Maybe they're thinking that or maybe you like women. I don't know. Um, Nothing wrong with liking women. If that's your thing, that's your thing. It's just personally not my thing. So I had moved back to California. I started attending my sister's church. And there was a gentleman in my sister's church who told my sister that he wanted to take me out on a date. And when my sister mentioned it to me, I'm like, nah, not interested. Just got out of a relationship. Nah, I'm good. And my sister says to me, he wants to take you on a date, not marry you. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, okay. I'll go on a date with him. So he and I meet. We go to breakfast. I don't know, lunch, dinner. Can't remember. But a nice guy. He seemed like a very nice guy, very attentive. Wasn't bad on the eyes. And so we started dating from that point on. About 8 months later, he asked me to marry him. And because this thought that I was having, which nobody probably was even thinking, I accepted the proposal. Never wanted a big wedding. We had a small, intimate wedding with just family and friends from both sides. I had never been to Hawaii, so I wanted us to go to Maui for our honeymoon. So I got everything set up the hotel, I set up the venue for the marriage, all that. Only thing he had to do was show up and then pay half the credit card when the statement came out. So we get married that Saturday. We board the plane Sunday, go to Maui. We're both exhausted. We sleep on the plane, get the rental car, go to the hotel. It is overlooking the ocean. Gorgeous. So we got there on Sunday. Come Monday, we go to the supermarket because our hotel room had like a kitchenette and stuff. And my then husband was a great cook. Whatever I would ask for, he would cook it. Really good cook. So we stocked the kitchen with food because we're going to be there for 7 days. So I would say probably about Tuesday, he and I go to the local mall and we're having lunch, right? And we're sitting and we're chit-chatting back and forth, and I'm all gushy because, I still got rice in my hair, and we're just chit-chatting. He says something to me, but I don't quite understand what he says because I'm looking down, I'm eating, and I look up at him and I say, "What did you say?" And he had this strange look on his face. And he just said, "My wife." So I think that was like Tuesday or Monday. I don't know. But anyway, that Sunday that we got to the hotel, the pastor's wife of the church that we were attending, she had passed away. She had been dealing with an illness. And so my husband had started kind of going through a grieving process. And so he was kind of quiet. And so, being the loving, dutiful wife that I am, I wanted to just allow him to go through the grieving process, be there to support him. So we wake up on Wednesday And I could see that he was still in his feelings. So I say to him, hey, you know, let's go out on the balcony, look at the ocean, because that's what we have been doing. He's like, no. I said, well, you know what? You need to get out of this room. Let's just go walk on the beach. No, I don't want to go walk on the beach. I don't want to go walk on the beach. So I'm like, oh. So I just go walk on the beach, still giving him his time. So I ended up spending most of that day by myself. And so the next night, I believe it was, I wanted Italian food. So I say to my husband, hey, I really want some Italian food, thinking that he was going to go in the kitchen and chef it up, right? He looks at me like, so now I know he's not going to chef it up. So I call downstairs to the concierge to see if they can recommend a local Italian restaurant. They give me a recommendation. I go back to my husband. I'm like, you know, they're saying that this is a great restaurant. He goes, whatever. So we get to the restaurant. I asked the maitre d' how long will it take to be seated, because the restaurant was pretty crowded. He says 45 minutes. I go to my hubby. I say, hey, they said it's going to be 45 minutes. He goes, whatever. So we sit down. I'm still trying to make small talk. He's just grunting, not wanting to chit chat with me or anything. So after about an hour of waiting, I say to my husband, hey, they said it was going to be 45 minutes. It's been over an hour. Can you go ask how much longer? And he says to me, you are the one that wanted Italian food. You asked. So I get up, ask the maitre d'. Maitre d' says 5 more minutes. I say to my husband, 5 more minutes. He goes, whatever. So we finally are seated. I order lasagna. I'm still trying to talk to this man. He's not responding. I'm literally crying in my pasta, right? We get back to the room. He won't sleep in the bed with me. I think he slept on the couch. Next morning, again, I try it again. Hey, would you like to go and walk on the beach? No. So I sit next to him. I'm trying to rub his back. This man says, get away from me. Go sit over there in that chair. So I'm like, eesh. So now I grab my little bag. I say I'm going to the beach. I go to the beach. I'm sitting on the beach. I call my daughter's father. I'm like, look, this is what's going on. I tell him everything. He's like, that's weird. You need to be careful, right? I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I'm sitting on the beach. I'm on the beach for probably about 30 minutes. All of a sudden, I look over to my right and I see my husband coming down the stairs, because you have to come down some stairs to come onto the beach. And I'm sitting in the sand with this wooden thing behind me that you can sit on. And I'm like, oh, it's about to be great now. So he sits behind me. He doesn't sit in the sand. He sits behind me. And he's telling me about how he and his son are not going to move in, that we moved too soon. And, you know, he's coming up with all these scenarios. And I'm just like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? We just got married. You know, we can work this out, because I really love this guy. He's the first man that I've ever allowed myself to fall in love with, because I had never been in love before, because I never allowed myself to fall in love. But this time I allowed myself to fall in love, and I was in love with him. So to hear that he and his son were not moving into my house I was sad about that. So the whole time he's talking to me and telling me about what he's not going to do, he's digging a hole. And I had my sandals sitting next to me. And my husband is digging this hole. And all of a sudden he takes my sandals and he puts my sandals in the hole. And he covers them up. And I looked at him and I said, why did you do that? And he had this sadistic grin on his face. And it just like woke me up. And I said, you know what? I said, I know what you're trying to do. I said, for some reason you want to break me. I said, but that will not be happening. I said, guess what? You're right. You and your son will not be moving into my house. I dug my shoes out of the hole, stood up, walked up them stairs back to our hotel room, found his jeans, found his keys, took my house keys key off his key ring. And I was done. Because you are not going to break me. And so he comes back in the room 20 minutes later, and he could tell that I had changed. And all of a sudden, this man went back to the sweet, loving man that I married. And my wife. I said, oh, hell no. Because now I know you crazy. And then he was wanting me to go back out on the balcony with him. I said, no, I'm not going on the balcony. I haven't lost anything on the balcony. Because I was afraid he was going to throw me over. So I needed to spend, I think we still had 4 days left in Maui. But I was a little afraid of him now because he seems crazy. Like I saw this crazy side of him, but not so much that I saw the crazy side, but I saw the flip back, and that was scary. So I avoided him for the whole rest of the time while we were in Maui. We board the plane back to LAX. I try to lose him in LAX. I can't lose him because now he's shoulder to shoulder like we're in handcuffs. He had already started moving some of his stuff in my house, like, just little small bags of clothes and stuff like that because his lease wasn't up on his apartment. And speaking of apartment, he told me that the reason why he was in an apartment was because he allowed his ex-wife to keep the house because she had the kids, right? Understandable. So we get back to my house at about 2 a.m. in the morning. He hits the stairs to go upstairs to the bedroom. I said, if you don't get your ass off my stairs, I said, get out of my house, right? He won't leave. So I go upstairs, lock the door, because he said he was going to leave in the morning. I'm like, whatever, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I go upstairs, lock my door, I go to sleep. 9 o'clock in the morning, I wake up to the smell of bacon. He's chefing it up in my kitchen, cooking bacon. I came downstairs with blood in my eyes. I said, if you don't get out of my house, I'm calling the cops. Get out. So he started grabbing up his bags, talking about, when are we going to go pick Daly up? I said, dude, you will never see Daly again. Just get your stuff and get out of my house. Get out. So he finally put some of his stuff in his car. It was like, I couldn't get everything, trying to make up a reason to come back. I said, it'll be by the trash can. I'll leave the side gate unlocked. Come get it, right? I go pick Daly up, go to my mom's house to get Daly, my daughter. And she goes to me, because I hadn't told my family yet what had happened. So Daly says to me, she goes, Mom, where's my dad? I said, your dad is in North Carolina. She goes, no. Not my old dad, my new dad. I said, remember how Mommy used to always tell you that if somebody's not nice to you, don't play with them? And she goes, yes. I said, well, your new dad wasn't nice to Mommy. Mommy's not going to play with him anymore. And she goes, oh, okay. And she runs off and goes playing. So I told my family what happened. They were like, weird. So I was devastated. Because like I said, I love this dude, right? And so I would think maybe about a week later, I called one of his best friends that he had introduced me to. Real nice lady. And she goes to me, oh my God, Janice, I'm so glad you called. She goes, what happened? She goes, because he won't tell me what happened. And I started telling her what happened. And she finally says to me, she goes, how much do you know about him? I said, I know everything about him. She goes, tell me what you know. And I started telling her what I had learned in the 8 months. She goes, no. She goes, he told me that he had told you everything and you still wanted to marry him. So now I'm like, whoa, what? What is it? She was like, no, I'm not saying anything. She goes, but I want you to go to the local library in this city. And she goes, I want you to get a newspaper for this date and this year. And she says, that's all I'm telling you. Right? So the next day I go to the library in that city. I go to the archives and I'm looking through all the local pages. looking. And all of a sudden I see local man, R words, and kidnaps ex-wife. His name, but the age is incorrect. Now, mind you, before I reached out to his friend, I had already gone to the courthouse that Monday morning. I was standing at the courthouse when they put the key in the lock to open the door because I wanted out of this marriage. And I wanted to get my marriage annulled. They told me that in order for me to get my marriage annulled, I had to prove fraud. And I said, what the fraud is, he didn't love me, obviously. They said, no. They go, look, if you do the papers for annulment and you can't prove fraud, they said, you're going to have to start this process all over again. I'm like, I don't want to start it all over again. I'm just going to file for divorce. Filed the papers for divorce, had my sister serve them. So by the time I talked to the friend, I had already had the divorce papers served to him. So when I saw this newspaper article with the incorrect age and the fact that he had done something so devious, I knew I had fraud on him, right? So I was like, I got to speak to this ex-wife. I got to speak to the ex-wife. I remember when his daughter used to come to my house, she would call her mom from my house phone. So I had her number. So I called her. And I left her a voicemail, letting her know that I wanted to speak to her. And she finally called me back about 2 days later. And her response was, you finally met him. And she went to tell me everything that happened. So they broke up. She had moved on with her life, and she had a boyfriend. Valentine's Day, she and her boyfriend go out to dinner. They go home, and they're sleeping. All of a sudden, her bedroom door is kicked in. This maniac kicks the door in, takes the prune, put it to the boyfriend's head, pulls the trigger. Fortunately, it misfires. Boyfriend jumps out the window. He takes the ex-wife, put her in the car, take her to a hotel, and R-words her. Helicopters flying all around, trying to find him. He finally lets her go, and he turns himself in like, I don't know, a few days later, right? They go to trial. The ex-wife doesn't want to testify because, she's afraid of the maniac, right? The boyfriend that she was dating at the time couldn't testify because, unfortunately, he ended up no more. They said at his own hands, but I don't know. I didn't even get into it. So when the wife and I were talking, ex-wife and I was talking, she talked about an ex-wife. And I said, whoa. I said, I thought I was wife number 2. She says, no, I'm wife number 2. I asked her about the year he was born in. And he had given me the wrong year. So I asked her, I said, where did you guys get married at? Because I knew that I was going to get a copy of her marriage certificate, because that would be another piece of fraud. And she told me where they were married at. So I reached out to that city and state records and got a copy of their marriage certificate. I'm looking at the marriage certificate. Number of previous marriages on hers was 1. Number of previous marriages on mine was 1. But mine should have been 2. His birthday year for her on her marriage certificate, a year before, a year off. So he made himself with me like a year younger, which I don't know why it would have made that big of a difference. Maybe he just didn't know his birthday, dumbass. But anyway, so now I got the newspaper article, number of previous marriages, and birthday year wrong. Fraud. So I go back to the courthouse. I refiled the paperwork for annulment because I really wanted an annulment. So I have my friend, one of my best friends, serve him because he worked at a school, the annulment papers. I knew he wasn't going to show up to court because, like, what are you going to say? I rape and kidnap women, right? So I go to court. Judge calls me up. He goes, I see that you're looking to have your marriage annulled based off of what? I say fraud. He goes, well, what is the fraud? I say, Your Honor, can I present you with some information? So he was like, yes. So I send up my marriage certificate, her marriage certificate, his birth certificate, and the newspaper article. So the judge is reading this. He reads the newspaper article like 3 times. He looks at me, he says, he didn't tell you any of this? I said, absolutely not. I would have never married the lunatic. He goes, okay. He goes, definitely fraud. He goes, I'm going to enter a judgment of annulment based as of, and he said that current date. Then he goes, no. He goes, what day did you get married? And I'm telling him, I don't even remember what day I got married now, but I knew then. So I gave him that date. He goes, annulment effective, and he used that date. So I was able to get that marriage annulled. And I have seen him since then. Dude still in the same place he was back then. He's still wearing that L. One of my nieces ran into him. I think this was probably about 6 or 7 months ago. And she sends me a picture of him. She snuck and took a picture of him. Man, down bad. Down bad. You can't do people wrong and it not come back on you. So that is why I was married for 7 days. If you don't want to get married, don't do it. It ain't worth it. But I tell you, I married my daughter's father after that, and we were married for about 3 years. So one thing it taught me is that I did have the ability to fall in love if I allowed myself to. But so just make sure you're extremely careful with who you fall in love with. And now I believe in background check, background check, background check. Because had I done a thorough background check on this dude, I would have found all that out. So, alrighty. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, leave me a nice comment, subscribe, and hit that notification button. All right.